Harvey Weinmum here, and in this video I kind of want to explain a theory I've come up with. It's kind of a silly little theory, and I've tried to make videos on it before, but it just doesn't come out right. I'm sure other people have come up with this before. I would be shocked to find out I'm the only person who's thought about this, but it really seems like to me so many events in history are retroactively justified after the fact. I call it the after the fact effect. That's the sort of name that I've dubbed it. And the way that I would describe it is, you have a big event that happens in history. The biggest one I would say is World War II, or actually World War One was the one that I had in mind. World War One was interesting because, if you didn't know, the whole concept of it was designed to be a final blowout between all of these great powers. It wasn't a reluctant war, as far as I'm aware. It was kind of forced, because they viewed it as an opportunity to settle scores between different countries. It was labelled the war to end all wars, right? Because before that there was Napoleon, right? He was originally what people would view as Adolf Hitler, would be Napoleon. And before that it was the Pharaoh. He was the epitome of evil, the Pharaoh. So you have all of these wars in Europe, wars in the Americas as well, Britain and France. You had the Dutch East Indies and all of the issues with over there. There was so many different things happening at the time that when the First World War broke out, everybody knew that this was going to be a big deal. That this was like loads of people were going to die. Like, everybody knew it. And people, like, you had the white feathers, right? If you didn't sign up for the war, you were forced to wear a white feather to signal that you were a coward. Because people knew at the time. They knew what was going on. They knew that they were going to die for no reason. And they were kind of socially forced into it in a lot of cases. And then you fast forward after the fact, and people admit that, yeah, it was a needless war. We killed an entire generation of people. They're called the lost generation for a reason, right? Their lives ended meaninglessly, and they never achieved anything. They died young, 16 years old, 17 years old or something. People used to sign up before that. They used to pretend to be older than they really were. It's terrible. It's really terrible. But society admits it after the fact, even though they knew at the time. Again, they had this system of labelling you with a particular item to show that you're a coward. It's a social pressure to be involved. So they knew at the time. They knew people didn't want to do it, so they had to come up with something, right? In the same way that if we fast forward to 2020, they would label you a conspiracy theorist, or, you know, an anti-vaxxer, right? It's the same idea. Social pressure to push ideas on people. And then once the idea has, or the event has fulfilled its usefulness, such as in this case, you know, eliminating large portions of the European population, they come out afterwards and they say, you know what, yeah, it did suck, but it's too late to do anything now. Like, isn't that weird? The Second World War is not the same idea, because the Second World War was different. It was based on different principles, and Germany wanted to get back at the rest of the world because of how it was treated in the Treaty of Versailles. So that was a different situation. But even like Korea, the people that died in Korea to stop the spread of communism, and Vietnam. Think of all the Americans that died in Vietnam for no reason, to stop the spread of Bolshevism in Southeast Asia. At the time, you had the peace protests, the hippie movement, right? Make love, not war. People knew, again, at the time, it's a needless war. But it didn't matter. These people were suppressed. And then after the fact, right? The after the fact effect, these people are regarded as servants of social change, of sticking it to the man, right? Telling the man no. And we kind of worship these people. But at the time, being a hippie was like being a communist. I mean, just 10 years before that, you had McCarthyism in the 1950s. People ratting on their neighbours because they think that they're communist infiltrators. Right? 9/11 was another one. Obviously, they didn't know it was going to happen, but they did kind of know that Al Qaeda was going about, right? They used to train Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda was supposed to be pro-American. And then they switched sides. There was warnings about an imminent attack or whatever, right, at the time in 2001. They knew it was going to happen. And then once it happened, because you had all the protests as well that were happening during the late 90s. You had the LA riots and everything, remember? There was a lot going on at the time. And then they go, oh, well, yeah, 9/11 was an inside job or whatever, or we knew about it, but it's too late, bro. 2008 is another one. I'm not going to bore you with different events, obviously. That's the last one that I'll give an example of. But there's that guy, Michael Burry. He knew what was going to happen. The Big Short, the movie, The Big Short, was about that. So, there are so many events where it really seems like they try to shut you up until their goals have fulfilled what they're supposed to do. And then, once it's done its job, they come out and they tell you, yeah, okay, you were right, but it's too late. It's like with COVID. All of these liberal democracies suddenly became communitarian, right? Almost fascist, in a way. The idea that you were a sovereign individual and you had individual rights and nobody could impede on these rights, and you had this like gender identity, and you know I'm a they them or a z. That was all that's pre-COVID. We're in a different era now to that. All of that shit, that hyper individualism, in a sense, it was done away with by the powers that be, and they became communitarians, that we need to do things for the benefit of our community, and if you're not doing what you're told, then you're putting people's lives in danger and you're the bad guy. And that's who the community can point their finger at and say is the bad guy. Right? This guy who didn't get his injection. And then after the fact, you know, you live in a world post-COVID, and the government comes out and says, you know, yeah, the vaccines were pretty useless, and the masks don't work. None of it was worth anything. We didn't need to lock everybody in their houses to protect old people. We didn't need to do that. We didn't need to destroy like a year and a half of like the youth's lives, and fuck up their brains forever because they're like glued to a television screen or their phone. But it's too late, bro. It's, you know, after the fact they'll admit it. Once the damage is done. So then we enter the modern era, post-COVID, where you have all this like excess male incel kind of shit, right? All these guys who can't find someone. In 10 years, once these people age out of the dating market and they're old fuckers with nothing, and all these women with all these tattoos, they start to regret it and all that, it'll all come out. that we had like a societal sickness. You know, that the 2020s were, it was like a mass psychosis where everybody kind of lost their fucking marbles because of what happened during COVID. Nobody knows what to believe anymore. Everybody's fucking just went completely bananas. It's a tragedy. There's a lost generation of people who just didn't find anyone because everybody was mentally ill as fuck. All these women on medications, bipolar disorder, all these men jaded, not wanting to go to work anymore because what's the fucking point? In 10 years, 15 years, it's going to come out again. And it's going to be the same fucking situation. Oh, we could have done something, but we just didn't see it at the time. Sorry, guys. It's a disgrace. But that's the world that we live in. And so that's my theory, the after the fact effect. I think I don't think you can deny it. Maybe it's not malicious. Maybe they just don't know. They just don't see these things at the time. And people like me with very perceptive pattern recognition skills, you know, we can see it before they do. But that's why I make videos like this. You know, I'm trying to put the word out. These things are happening. And if we don't do something about it, there's going to be a huge fuck up that we're going to have to just admit 10 years down the line that it happened, whilst another thing is fucking happening, and then 10 years down the line from then, we admit the same thing. Meanwhile, you have all these people trying to tell you that this is happening right now and we need to fucking solve it. Brexit is another one for Britain. All the people who knew Brexit would have been a fucking nightmare, and look what's happened. This country is done for. So, that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you think, bro.